Welcome to the Special Education Inner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Katherine Witcher. If you sit at an IEP table, you belong here. For over 25 years, I've been helping parents, teachers, admins, and therapists build IEPs that work in the real world, and I can't wait to help you. Let's dive in. So today I'm going to let you guys in on 3 conversations that just happened inside of our Master IEP Coach community. So Master IEP Coaches are parents, teachers, admins, and therapists who are working to help parents through the IEP system. So we talk a lot in special education about things that are going wrong, about, all the struggles that are happening, but we don't always talk about a lot of the wins or the things that we can do in a positive, collaborative way to build better IEPs. So these 3 conversations I'm going to share with you are things that are happening right now, and I hope that you can apply them to your IEP table. So the first one is we had a big discussion on the difference between a compliant IEP and a compliant IEP that is the best fit for a child. So having done this for many, many years, so I think 25 years professionally, writing IEPs and helping parents and teachers build IEPs that work in the real world, I've been through a lot of paperwork, right? I've been through a lot of things where there's been lawyers involved and making sure that a SMART goal is truly a SMART goal and making sure all the data is there and making sure that it's a legally compliant IEP. But there's a whole other layer, and this is kind of the sweet spot where Master IEP Coaches really thrive in helping parents through the system. It is making sure that this parent educational concerns section or this parent input section of the IEP is really highlighted. So not only do we have a compliant IEP where the parent input statement is filled out, like it's there, the parent educational concerns are very evident, but that it becomes a true driver inside of the IEP process for the child. So it is not just compliant, but a best fit. So there are so many IEPs that I can look through and say, yes, this absolutely is legit. Like we've got all the pieces that we need, but I don't see it as a best fit for the child because the parent concern section is weak, or the parent concern section is not the driver. And parents are the only people that are going to be with a child their entire school career and beyond, right? So we have to make sure that we are prioritizing what the concerns are from the parent. That's how we get to a truly compliant IEP. So if we're going to prepare a child for further education, employment, independent living, there's a good chance that you, unless you're the parent who's listening to this, there's a good chance that you, the teacher, you're not going to be with this child in their journey of figuring out what further education, employment, and independent living looks like. Which means that we have to truly dig into what are the parent concerns and how are we going to integrate them into all the other pieces of the IEP to make sure that we have not just this compliant IEP, but we have a best fit IEP. Now, I hesitate when I use that word best because I talk all the time about how the purpose and findings of ideal law says that we have to provide an IEP that's, free and appropriate public education. And the word appropriate doesn't always mean best. But I'm talking about like a best fit. I'm making sure that this compliant IEP that has all the appropriate services then, really wraps around what the child needs now and what they need in the future. So we had this conversation as Master IEP Coaches of just different ways to make sure that we are wrapping this IEP around what the child needs now and in the future. So that was one conversation that we had. The next conversation that we were talking about is kind of under the current climate of what's happening in our school system with staff shortages and just everybody being really pressed for time. And in the past, special education was really driven by meetings. It was meeting after meeting after meeting. And many of you might say, well, that's how it is now. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of things that we can be doing with pushing paperwork and having smaller meetings and making sure that we're doing all the paperwork the right way. Making sure that we're definitely compliant. So we just talked about being compliant. I want to make sure we're compliant in all of our different things that we're doing, okay, to build an IEP. But it doesn't require a meeting after meeting after meeting. When we initially started special education in our school system, we didn't have virtual things, right? We didn't have all of these different e-signatures. We didn't have all of the different tools that we have in technology that we can use now, but unfortunately, we are not using them to their fullest capacity to make sure that we're moving a child's education forward without waiting for the next meeting all the time. Again, I'm not asking for anybody to break any rules, but I'm saying, do we really need a meeting for this? Do we really need a meeting? Is there anything that we could do beyond just waiting for the next meeting? Is there anything that we could do to move a child's education, to find a solution, to help a child move forward, whatever this is? Do we truly need a meeting to change some of the services that we're all in agreement need to be changed? Do we really need a meeting to add in or take out some IEP goals that everybody is in agreement? No, we can do some paperwork shuffle. So I want to encourage you that if you feel like your child or your student's IEP is being held up because we got to wait for the next meeting and then we have to have the next meeting, I want you to ask yourself why. And can you be a voice for there perhaps not being another meeting and just things being able to move forward with all the proper paperwork being done, but not have to wait for that next meeting? Now, the third thing that we talked about this week, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating that we're still having a lot of conversations over placement in a very old school kind of way. So we're still having a lot of conversations in our school system of, because this child requires this level of support, they need to be over in that classroom. Now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know that we look at an IEP, which we're supposed to build all of the goals, all of the supports, all the services, and then work on where are the services going to be delivered, which would be called placement. But unfortunately, we have kind of this process that happens where we say, okay, well, the child needs this level of service. We got to go over to this, classroom over here. This is where kids who receive services like this get services over there in that classroom. And that's not how it should be. And we need to start flipping the conversation into a data-driven conversation, meaning that the specific situation that we talked about this week inside of the Master IEP Coach community was a family who has a child going from preschool to kindergarten. And the school is recommending that the child go to a self-contained classroom full day for kindergarten. And the parent's like, but I want to try general education with supports. And the school is saying no. Not no because they have data to show that it most likely will not be a meaningful environment. They're just saying no, that's not an option, that general education with supports is not an option. That's not true. It is an option that we need to explore. And if we're going to say no to it, we need to make sure that there's data that can be produced that says this would not be a meaningful, educational environment for this child because they can't access the environment even with all of the supports. And that does happen. I mean, I was a teacher in a self-contained special education room. Absolutely. There are absolute reasons why having, specialized instruction in a smaller environment with a highly qualified special education teacher makes sense. But to completely eliminate the option of general education with supports without having any information to say that is a valid next step is a really dangerous place to be. That's going to cause a lot of conflict. It's going to cause a lot of problems. So I want to encourage you that if you're a parent and your child is being recommended for a specific placement, just make sure you know the reasons why and that you have it in writing. And it's no disrespect to any type of special ed classroom when we want to say we want to try something else first and get the data and to see. Now, a lot of you are thinking like, yeah, that's least restrictive environment and that's how it's supposed to be. And we're supposed to try that first. But you know what? Not everybody wants that either. Not everybody wants general education with supports for their children. There's a lot of families that are just, they want the specialized instruction full day in a separate classroom in a smaller environment. That's what they want for their child. And there's nothing wrong with that either. The concept of least restrictive environment also needs to take into consideration those parent educational concerns, way back to that first conversation that I just mentioned, right? We have to look at what does a parent see as least restrictive for their child. We have to take that into consideration. And then we also have to make sure, again, that we have all the numbers, all the data, all the assessments, all the evaluations, all the things that we need to make really smart decisions. Because we know that putting a child into an environment that doesn't fit them very well is going to cause extreme stress for everybody involved, including the child. So I want to encourage you that if you have been thinking about becoming a Master IEP coach, and again, some people become a Master IEP coach because they're like, I want all the things to help myself. Like, I just want to help me. I'm not ready to help anybody else. I just want to help me. That's the Master IEP Coach Certificate Program. If you're like, what is this group that's going on where we have Master IEP coaches that are working together to then help other parents through the IEP process? That's our Master IEP Coach mentorship program. So if you want to help yourself only, you come into the Master IEP Coach certificate program. If you want to help others, you come into the Master IEP Coach mentorship and network program. And no matter what, go grab yourself a free IEP checklist at iepchecklist.com and get my favorite 12 IEP questions that you can download and ask before your next IEP meeting. I'll see you guys next time on the Special Education Inner Circle podcast. Wait, one quick thing before you go. If you enjoyed this episode of the Special Education Inner Circle podcast, could you please leave a review, share it with a friend, or maybe even take a screenshot and tag me on Instagram? Every time you leave a review or share, it helps more parents and teachers find resources they need to help them at their IEP table.